The Baltimore Ceasefire weekend started with optimism.
We all we got. We all we got. We all we got.
And ended with hope. Hope that the 72-hour effort to end murder in Baltimore had done more than just call attention to violence, but also connected the people who suffered through it in ways that had not existed before.
My son had this picture over his bed. It was when my son passed away, and Miss Kim, that was my first time meeting her. She came to my house because of my son, and I gave her this picture. This was over his bed before he passed away, you know? So it's so eerie.
They were that close, yeah.
Yeah, it was 4 of them, really, that was really close. Really good kids, too.
Throughout the weekend, Baltimore residents gathered all over the city to show their support, as organizers gave their all to keep spirits high and engage as many as possible.
We think that murder is the issue. And it's not. So then people will debate it like, that shit ain't gonna work, right? At the end of the day, they not doing no work. So how are you shooting at me for trying to solve a problem when you're not doing anything? So what I'm saying is, if you're still alive, if your spirit is still alive, please turn that shit back on. Like, turn it back on 10. We are all we have. This is one event in these last 3 days. There were events all through this city.
On Friday, supporters gathered in Northeast Baltimore to start what they hoped would be 72 hours without a single homicide. They spent the whole night outside, offering food, legal aid, and mental health services.
We can no longer keep asking folks to come to us. We have to come to them.
It was a call for peace that sought healing, not police or punishment.
We're trying to basically take our own community back and tell everybody drop the guns and, like, violence is not the answer.
A theme that continued throughout the weekend as participants talked about the root cause of violence that went beyond the political rhetoric and fear.
People are violent because they're stressed out. People are violent because they can't pay their rent. They're not getting adequate health care. They don't have the right information around housing. They feel that they can't talk up for themselves as a tenant because they don't have good credit, so the landlord's getting over on them. Why? People have criminal cases, petty criminal cases that they just don't have enough information about.
So one of the problems when people are talking about violence in Baltimore is that they talk about it in a vacuum, like it's just popped up. And they look at, and because of the racism and anti-blackness that surrounds our conversation, it always devolves into black-on-black crime. We always kill each other, etc. And one of the things that's essential is that looking at the conditions that people are living in, what's causing the violence in the first place. So it's not just that people are savages and people want to murder each other just because. Baltimore is a city where people are living in criminal conditions, hence it produces situations where people are trying to survive. And then when those conditions are produced, any group of people will respond how black people ever respond.
Activists mourned lives lost to violence in Baltimore.
When my brother was executed, it changed my life forever. So I already know how people feel when your loved one is murdered, regardless if it's law enforcement officers or someone on the street. A murder is a murder. Somebody's life is snatched forever.
And also talked about the solutions that could combat this violence in the future.
If I had a chance to change some of the things, I think that I would focus more on education. That's why I would focus more on education, because a lot of people that are committing the crimes, not only do they feel as though that is limited resources, a lot of them aren't educationally inclined to know what resources that they do have.
By Sunday afternoon, supporters gathered at the Shot Tower, a historic landmark in Baltimore, for a peace walk and vigil. And later, at March Funeral Home, a staple in Baltimore that buries many victims of gun violence. 2 homicides had occurred over the weekend, a fact that failed to dim their spirit or sense that something had changed. On hand was Mayor Catherine Pugh, who called for unity.
Back in January, I said that people need to get into the action because the city can't do it by itself, the police department can't do it by itself, and it really is going to take the uprising from the community.
But also acknowledged the city had to do more to help people heal.
And so we've got a lot of new things that are coming about because I, too, recognize that there's been a neglect of neighborhoods and communities. You know, there's no reason for North Avenue or Druid Hill Avenue or Druid Heights to look the way that it does, or Park Heights Avenue. To me, that's a sign of neglect for decades, and we're going to change that.
Finally, supporters marched downtown to the headquarters of The Real News. And present were two mothers who had lost their sons to violence. They talked about their pain, sense of loss, and worse, isolation.
Coming here, it makes me feel like, okay, it's my first time out. It's my first time. Mm-hmm.
When did your son pass?
Last February 3rd. And I've pretty much turned into a person that just stays in the house all the time.
A suffering in silence. They say the ceasefire had changed. An experience of community coming together for a purpose that for many is the beginning towards a goal of redefining how Baltimore thinks about and works to stop violence. With Darna Noor, this is Easy Jackson for The Real News.